Don't judge a book by its cover, or in this case, the illustration. No doubt there's been so many attempts at visualizing famous works of fiction through talented artwork. It helps us understand better while being something to admire, even out of context. You can call it reading through pictures. And yours truly is going to pay tribute to the best, with the top 10 fictional illustrations. Frankenstein by Mary Shelley is the first ever science fiction novel, a story about man playing God. It's fascinated us for almost 200 years. And when we think of Frankenstein, we think of Boris Karloff. But the 1831 illustration of the creature by Theodor von Holst reminds us of the tragic aspect of the story, along with feeling sympathy for the monster, through this beautifully dark Gothic image. War of the Worlds is a story that simply tells us that our neighbors on Mars are not nice, and it was responsible for giving us some of the best artwork out there. Most people are more familiar with the pencil drawings by Henryk Abmann-Cora, but this one image by Thomas Kidd, not only drawn well, it gives us a complete picture of the ending of this H.G. Wells novel, the end of the Martian invasion. Like with any war, nature's starting to reclaim things, and life is going on as though nothing had happened. Death of a Salesman is a pretty depressing play, even down to its title. Zach Pullen sums up the mood of this whole thing with this amazing painting of Willie ascending up to heaven, with that epic concrete jungle of New York behind him. It's also a nice touch not showing the face of the protagonist, as though it's kind of reflecting anyone who makes a living selling themselves. Arguably the most well-recognized and beloved illustrations in history belong to Lewis Carroll's Alice in Wonderland by John Tyndall, even providing illustrations for the sequel, Through the Looking Glass. Despite being a children's book, these images have lived on through history, even inspiring adaptations. A great attempt at making sense of something quite senseless. Something kids and adults can appreciate together. The most famous Christmas story ever, apart from the Nativity, falls under the writings of British author Charles Dickens, with A Christmas Carol, brought to life with the art of John Leech in 1843, looking very Victorian and very bizarre. The illustration of the ghost of Christmas present, greeting Scrooge with food and warmth, kicking off Christmas Day. Out of all the illustrations, I picked this out because this mostly felt like the heart of the book. It's also Scrooge's turning point. There's just so much atmosphere, even without reading a word of the page. Artist Octavio Ocampo uses his talent to create pictures of illusions made by things, one of those more than meets the eye type paintings. If it looks familiar, it's because it's very reminiscent of the work of Salvador Dali. And with that talent, he gave a face to the most famous Spanish fictional hero, Don Quixote, with the vision of Quixote. The ingenious way that this one portrait encapsulates all the stuff from the novel. A great way of keeping one of the most oldest novels relevant in this generation. Greek mythology is a goldmine for classical paintings. 1909's Ulysses and the Sirens by Herbert James Draper shows the trial of temptation while Ulysses passes by the songs of the sirens, from Homer's epic poem, The Odyssey. One of the greatest paintings to a story that never happened. It's told in such beautiful detail, as if it was a snapshot of a moment in history. The sirens were said to be ugly, monstrous creatures. Instead, the painting makes them seem like beautiful mermaids, making us understand Ulysses' desire to get closer to them. Like War of the Worlds, J.R.R. Tolkien's The Lord of the Rings trilogy lets artists envision Middle-earth through their imagination. There's so many pictures out there, but this one illustration has become an icon of science fantasy art. Gandalf the Grey, created by John Howe in 1989. It's a fabulous look to it, the simplicity, the use of colors, Gandalf's movement from rain into the sunlight. This would even end up being the front cover to many editions of the trilogy. Gustave Doré is the most legendary illustrator who ever lived. Most likely you've seen one of his drawings, even if it's only one, and the biggest project he was involved with was illustrating the Divine Comedy by Dante Alighieri, covering hell, purgatory, and heaven, and the gem of it known as the Celestial Rose, showing off the unbelievable light of God's love. If Dante was the man who mapped out the afterlife, then Doré was the man who said, "This is what it looked like." Shakespeare is the most famous writer in history, so any artist worth their salt took a crack at his vision of tragedy, comedy, and history, and the greatest was achieved by John Everett Mills of Ophelia from his most famous play, Hamlet. It depicts the drowning of the mad Ophelia. Despite her ghastly corpse, she fits in with the botanical nature of the scene, even with flowers that symbolize her own state in the story. Rest in peace.